So here's the thing, like even with the children, like you said, a dad being over their children. Well, actually, what they're trying to do now is actually make children on the same level as their parents by letting them try to have their own gender assignment sex surgeries at the age of 6.
Right.
Dude, my 5-year-old's 5 years old.
The term itself, toxic masculinity, what even is that? Is that guys who like beat their wives, or do they not let them vote? Like what is this toxic masculinity? What is an example of it even?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a general term. I mean, I'm sure there's a specific definition to it, but it can almost be used by the person as a not a objective standard, but like their perspective. From their perspective, what he's doing is toxic, right? That's toxic masculinity in action.
Here's toxic masculinity in action. A male holding up a sign at the abortion mill saying babies are murdered here. To them, that's toxic masculinity. Because what they would say is, well, you shouldn't say anything about a woman's body.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because as a man, you can't objectively say what's right and wrong unless you're a woman in that case, which doesn't make any sense.
Right. So we have people now, like women, in a sense, if they don't want to live the way that God created them to be, they don't even know who they are. And when they don't know who they are, that's when that's where chaos comes from. There's order in the world. There's order in the way that God created males and females, like you stated. There's purposes. There's dignity and worth. They're equal in the eyes of God for us to achieve our distinct purposes. But when that wants to be subverted, that's when we have the slaughter of innocent babies in the womb. You know, that's when we have a society now that is teaching children horrible things in the school system, saying that gender is fluid.
Right.
Teaching them these concepts at 5 to 6 years old.
Right.
So here's the thing, like even with the children, like you said, a dad being over their children. Well, actually, what they're trying to do now is actually make children on the same level as their parents by letting them try to have their own gender assignment sex surgeries at the age of 6.
Right.
Dude, my 5-year-old's 5 years old.
Right.
Like, what in the world? They wouldn't know what they're doing with their bodies.
Yeah.
Like, we're equal in the terms that we're all sinners that stand before a holy God, unjustified unless we humbly, accept the sacrifice of Christ on our behalf.
Right.
Like, we're equal in that way. We're not equal in any other way but the fact that we all deserve death.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you see that in our shows, you see that in TV and movies, like that's something so undeniable. The rebellious child who's always talking back to their parents, who's always the high school kid who's always telling his dad how dumb he is and how he just doesn't know anything and he doesn't know what I'm going through, and don't tell me what to do, Dad, or like shut the door of my room, Dad.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, okay, if you want to infuse rebelliousness in our culture and make that okay, well then yeah, put those shows out. But really, it's like, man, we're supposed to raise up our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. We're supposed to, it says in the Bible, if you don't love your children, you won't discipline them, right?
That's right.
To love your children is to discipline them.
Yes, absolutely.
That's love for your children, not to just let them choose whatever they should do and whatever, not to be liked by your children. I'm not my children's friend, right? I'm my children's father. That's intimate, but at the end of the day, I'm their dad. Yeah. I'm not their friend. I'm not looking for their approval. And it seems like in our culture, we're looking for our children's approval in media, right? The same thing with, husband and wife. As men, we're looking for approval from our wives so we can have sex with them. So we're going to make decisions so that we don't have to have arguments, so that we can sleep with them. It's just, I was watching this show. It's a remake of, what's the show? Lethal Weapon.
Oh.
And one of the main characters is Damon Wayans, and it's the same thing in his family. His wife is a lawyer, he's a cop, and his kids are teenagers, and his kids just are constantly like slamming the door on his face, and his wife's telling him like, oh, just let him have some time alone, or just leave him alone, don't let them do their thing. And he's constantly submitting to his wife because he wants to sleep with his wife, you know, and dad is just looked at as the working figure in the household and not the head, you know, and that creates all kinds of problems in that family. The children aren't disciplined the way that they're supposed to, and they're running rampant. So do you have any thoughts, Jesse, on this in our culture? Or was it you who was telling me about the artwork study of was it a transgender who did the artwork study of a culture? Was that you who told me about that?
No. I don't think so, no.
No, okay. No. I might be confusing
I'd like to hear about that, though.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
I forget who was telling me about it, but they pretty much, I'm paraphrasing, but they were telling me that there was a study done of the artwork in the Roman Empire from when the Roman Empire was...
Oh, you know, that was me.
That was you?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, and it was taken from a talk that I listened to by Camille Paglia, who's a very interesting character. But she was basically saying that in her study of cultures and the decline of cultures, that one of the signs of that is that there's a real resurgence of effeminate masculinity and like emasculation of true masculine characters, and sort of an exaltation of transgenderism. So just based on that alone, I would not be at all surprised if our culture's in its death throes.
Right.
And what'll happen is you get taken over by the barbarians. So
sure.
Where that's going to come from, who knows? It could be radical Islam, it could be,
China.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, like, who knows where it is, but the barbarians will be at our gates, and we're not going to be able to defend ourselves.
And the study was essentially, there was a study of art, right, and they were showing these masculine figures at the beginning of at the rise of the Roman Empire, right, and then Hercules, at the end of it, and then at the end of it, there was like effeminate art of men were seen as an effeminate role. Yeah,
exactly. Just the kind of the overall caricature of the subjects were more effeminate men, essentially. Yeah, that was a really interesting talk. I definitely recommend listening to that. Her name's Camille Paglia. Yeah, very interesting. But I don't know. One thing I do have a thought on this is that while all this is going around, whose fault is it? I think it's our fault as men for allowing that to take place, for kind of sitting by and doing nothing while the tide of culture washes over us.
Yeah.
Right.
And as Christian men, we should be fighting against that. We should be standing up for what God has outlined for us.
Absolutely.
I agree, dude.
Absolutely.
110%.
Yeah, we must lead biblically. That should be our goal in our households, to lead our family biblically, to be the salt and the light of the earth, and also lead our family in the same way. Lead by example and by our words, right? Yeah. Live it out and speak it. Raise up our children the way that they should go. Not to say that we should be tyrants in our household.
No, absolutely not.
But at the same time, we should have the final word. We would have the final say. But we also need to be loving and cherishing our wives, as the Bible talks about. Mm-hmm. As Christ died on we should not submit, but we should love our wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for, which is a sacrificial giving. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we give of ourselves. So it is sanctifying, because we can't just be selfish, right? We can't be selfish. That's not a godly man. Mm-hmm. A godly man is not merely, we're doing it this way because this is what I like and how it should be. Exactly. It's more so, what's the best thing for our family? What's the best thing as a whole? That's how we would make our decisions, not, what's the easiest thing for me.